All right, let's take a look at solving some more quadratic equations by factoring using the guidelines that we had talked about. Let's go over those. Here we go. Step number 1 was get it into standard form, and that is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Some things I want to say about that. Here, that's easy to do. This is 360 x squared minus 120x is equal to 0. We're just going to subtract 120x from both sides. Now, there are some common mistakes that are made right away in step 1, and I'll come back to those at the end of this example. But it's not really good to show you what common mistakes are so that you make them. So be careful. Step number 2, we want to factor. Here we're going to use some good old-fashioned GCF factoring. We only have 2 terms, so let's pull out the GCF. It looks like 120x will go into both of those evenly, and we'll have 3x minus 1 equals 0. So there it is, factored, GCF factoring. Step 3, we'll use the zero product property. Because we have the product of 120x times the quantity 3x minus 1 equaling 0, either 120x equals 0 or 3x minus 1 equals 0. Step 4, we'll solve both equations individually. And so we'll have 120x is equal to 0, and we'll just go ahead and divide or multiply both sides by 1 over 120. That's going to give us x is equal to 0, so that's one possible answer. Or 3x minus 1 equals 0, in which case we'll add 1 to both sides, and that'll give us 3x is equal to 1. And then we'll multiply both sides by 1/3, and we'll get x is equal to 1/3. Let me move this next example down just a little bit. And then maybe I should move some of this up, actually. Let's see. Let's create some more room. Oh. There we go. Step 5, we're going to check. Our equation was 360x squared is equal to 120x. And if x is 0, 360 times 0 squared equals 120 times 0, which implies that 0 equals 0, which is true. And if x equals 1/3, then 360 times 1/3 squared is equal to 120 times 1/3, which means that 360 times 1/9 is equal to 120 times 1/3. But 9 goes into 36 4 times, so 9 goes into 364 times, and 1/3 of 120 is also 40. Check. Now, like I said, we want to go back up and talk about what you shouldn't do. So let's put this in a different color here. Note dividing by 120 on both sides gives 3x squared is equal to x. But dividing by x gives 3x equals 1, which means that x equals 1/3. Now, you might notice that 1/3 was one of our answers. Is that good or bad? Well, it's good that we got one of the answers, but what about this other answer? Well, it turns out that what you've just done is you've broken the cardinal rule of the multiplication property. You're allowed to multiply or divide both sides of the equation by anything you want as long as it's not 0. But we have not found out what x is, and x could have been 0. In fact, x was 0 here. So when you divide by a variable, you're possibly dividing by x. So we have lost one of our answers. What about x equals 0? So just be careful about that kind of thing and follow the guidelines. If you don't follow the guidelines, you're liable to get into some really weird situations. So be careful.